the not-so-Cold War.
Ice, ice, U.S. Ice, ice, Russia. The ice-cold war. Alright, stop. The race for space is happening. Proxy wars and nuclear weapons.
But wait! How did this even start? Is this even on?
Jane, we're live.
Oh, sorry. In 1947, the U.S. wanted to lend a helping hand to its Western European allies after World War II.
More like President Truman wanted to.
Actually, it was more like the U.S. wanted to stop the spread of communism since the Western European economy was in bad shape. The U.S. even offered aid to the USSR, but
The Soviets told the U.S. to screw off because the Soviets felt threatened by the greedy capitalists of Western nations.
In 1945, at the Conference of Yalta, Germany was divided into spheres of influence that each of the victors divided among themselves. The democratic powers formed one West Germany, while East Germany was placed under Soviet control. In Berlin, the Russians cut off the West, push Europe out, and unite all of East Germany under a communist regime, known as the Berlin Blockade.
The Europeans didn't like this, so they did what they did best. They interfered in international relations. Russia ended up ending their siege and building a wall between East and West Berlin to make Germany great again!
Horses in the bag, horse stock is attached. Head is matted black, got the bushes black.
Careful, SpongeBob! Just 2 drops of that stuff could...
Got it. 2 drops.
blow our faces off.
Jessica, what the are you doing?
Sorry. So what's up with the rest of the world?
Well, you see, Europe was divided into two. You got the East and you got the West. Western countries, well, more specifically the U.S., were #shook by communism, so they formed NATO, a military alliance to combat Soviet communist advances.
So, wait, more alliances? Really?
Of course, Western nations would form an alliance, because, why not? The U.S. felt threatened when more and more third world countries were implementing communism in their government, so they created this organization to keep capitalism alive.
But did the USSR really just sit there?
Of course not. The Soviets were a little #triggered by NATO, so they formed the Warsaw Pact in order to protect their communist satellite states from capitalism. But the Warsaw Pact was less an alliance because it was just Russia demanding their Soviet satellites to fight against capitalism.
Hello, and welcome back to our segment about proxy wars, where me and my sidekick,
Hey,
Casey...
I am not your sidekick.
Well then, Casey, why do you speak after me? Anyway, what even is a proxy war?
That's a war between 2 states that was instigated by larger powers that are not directly involved in that conflict.
Oh, so like the Korean and Vietnam Wars?
Exactly, and if I'm the sidekick, how come I know all the information? Like that the Korean War was between North Korea, which was communist, and South Korea, which was capitalist. It began in 1950 when the North invaded the South following a series of clashes along the border.
The U.S. became involved and pushed North Korean troops all the way back to China. The fighting ended on July 27, 1953, when an armistice was signed. The agreement created the Korean Demilitarized Zone to separate North and South Korea and allowed the return of prisoners.
With the tensions being high on both sides of the Cold War, each superpower tried to gain the advantage over one another by militarizing, also known as creating a ton of nukes. The U.S. used to have a monopoly on the nuclear weapons, but Soviet spies broke that monopoly.
Freaking Russian spies!
Fortunately, there was no actual nuclear warfare that would blow up the world, but the possibility of it further intensified during the Cold War. And there wasn't just a buildup of nuclear weapons, but Cold War also started the space race between the U.S. and the USSR.
Let's eat. Oops. Did you know that Cuba became a communist country during the Cold War, which led to the Cuban Missile Crisis?
What?
Yeah, because Fidel Castro came into power.
So Russia had an alliance with Cuba?
Yeah, Russia used Cuba's close proximity to the USA to their advantage and put nuclear weapons there.
So Russia and the U.S. wanted to one-up each other with everything they did?
Of course, they had a race to space, military, weapons, you name it.
So what about this missile crisis thingy?
Basically, Russia put missiles in Cuba, and the United States started freaking out about it. And the USA was like, wait, stop, don't bomb us. And it ended with the USA agreeing to take their nuclear weapons out of Turkey and the USSR agreeing to take their weapons out of Cuba. Side effects of the Cold War may include, but are not limited to, proxy wars, non-aligned nations, the Red Scare, the spread of communism, the Berlin blockade, the creation of NATO and the Warsaw Pact, nuclear arms race, and the race of space. If you are allergic to radiation, don't launch nuclear weapons.